mayor called it murder right here, then walked it back. Now the man's family wants the city to put its prosecutors where the mayor's mouth was. A prominent sheriff tells me the new police accountability is like a knife being held to your throat. You can imagine how that choice of words is being received. We choose to see day 7 of Denver's protests through the eyes of its young citizens. Denver wanted to shut down post office facilities over coronavirus. The Postal Service says it was a communication issue. Should have sent them a letter. And I'd like to invite you to join me in cleaning up Civic Center Park. There are enough people watching Next right now. We can get it done in no time. 10 years. Marvin Booker's family waited to hear one word, that his death at the hands of jail deputies in Denver was murder. They heard Mayor Michael Hancock use that word here on Friday and saw his spokeswoman try and take it back yesterday. Marvin Booker's family now wants a new investigation to prove that that one word is true. Our Marshall Zellinger talked with Booker's brother in Atlanta, and Marshall, they have gone straight to the district attorney today.
And when District Attorney Beth McCann became DA in 2017, she actually asked a grand jury to look at the Marvin Booker case, not for homicide charges, but rather potential misconduct with the sheriff's deputies involved in his death. After seeing the mayor's comments on Next last week, Booker's brother reached out to McCann again, asking for yet another investigation. Booker died in July 2010 after being restrained in the Denver County Jail. The autopsy suggested drugs and an enlarged heart played a role in his death. His family believes he was killed by a chokehold and the use of a stun gun. Today, Booker's brother sent a 2-page letter to District Attorney Beth McCann and included Mayor Hancock, Chief Paul Pazin, Public Safety Manager Murphy Robinson. It asked the DA to consider bringing murder charges against the 5 Denver sheriff's deputies involved in his death, especially now that the mayor used the term murder. Yesterday, Hancock's spokeswoman told me the mayor meant killed by law enforcement, not murdered.
To walk it back is politics. Unfortunately, I will hope that he will understand to get his city back under control, to get the anger out of people's hearts. He has to be true to his word and speak truth to power for what it is.
They think the civil case was a buyout or a payout in order not to prosecute. That's just part of seeking justice for your loved one. But there's another step.
That payout that his sister-in-law speaks about is the $6 million that the city of Denver paid to settle a lawsuit in that death. Kyle, it's clear that based on words, this is an issue, and also the protests that are going on, this is an issue that's not going to go away easily.
Mm-hmm. And Marshall, suffice to say, if Denver prosecutors wanted to re-examine this case, they could. Their hands aren't tied on it.
Yeah, and as we've heard, after we heard the mayor use that term on Friday, we heard from a number of people that said murder does not have a statute of limitations, so there would be nothing preventing someone from looking at that yet again.
All right, Marshall, thank you. Democrats in the state legislature today dropped their police accountability bill. It would require body cameras, restrict the use of deadly force, and it would keep officers who have inappropriately used force from just moving on to a different department in another place. Representative Leslie Herod of Denver first unveiled that plan to protesters yesterday.
They will no longer be held and hide from criminal prosecution. We will also make sure that our bad law enforcement officers do not travel to another city when they lose their job for killing one of us.
Larimer County's Republican Sheriff Justin Smith tells me that he opposes this bill, particularly where law enforcement officers would lose qualified immunity. Basically, it's legal wiggle room that helps them avoid lawsuits if they can show that they made a good faith effort to follow the law while on duty. Sheriff Smith is furious also about how this bill is being hurried through the legislature, though he might not be able to do anything about it.
It felt like to me was that somebody snuck up behind you, Kyle, put a knife to your throat and said, I'm here to negotiate your safety. And that's literally what it felt like, because what she told us is, here's the bill. It's going to pass. If you want some changes, certainly, offer up your changes. So it really frustrated me.
Pretend qualified immunity goes away tomorrow for all the folks who work under you.
Mm-hmm.
What would practically change in terms of the way that they do their job and deal with the public?
What practically is going to change is this is not going to be nearly as safe a community, because the people in this state count on their police officers being out there to confront people that are potentially violating the law. But if every time an officer does anything in the field, they're risking their children, their wife, their family's financial future for the first $100,000 of a lawsuit, why would they go and intervene?
I'm sure some folks would argue that if every officer had all that on the line with every citizen interaction, they'd be a hell of a lot more careful, and probably it would save some lives.
Well, I think just the opposite. They're going to not act. Why would they act? Why would they intervene?
What did you think when you first watched and listened to that video of George Floyd's death?
To watch that unfold minute after minute and watch an individual's life drain out of them for absolutely no reason sickened and disgusted me. Sadly, in this profession, you see people die. It's something you never want to see. And to see it happen at the hands of a police officer who took an oath to protect his community and did that angered and sickened me.
In response today to Sheriff Smith's comment to me about the police accountability bill being like a knife to your throat, Representative Herod tweeted, "It's a much more reasonable approach than someone putting a knee to your neck 9 minutes until you die." My full unedited conversation with Larimer County Sheriff Smith is on the next YouTube channel. Let's get a look at the state of the protests and the state of our country right now through the eyes of some of the youngest to come out for Day 7 in Denver today. Our Anusha Roy asked those young people what they want to see from their communities to feel safe.
The signs these 7-year-old brothers held in front of the Capitol are both simple and powerful.
Why are we out here today, guys?
As they try to understand a difficult lesson so young.
Because somebody got hurt, right? And we want to let people know what? What do we want to let people know? It's not okay, and making sure that there's no bias or hate inside of that conversation.
My mom wants me and my brothers to have a better future.
The kids out here today may be young, but have seen a lot, like Taylor Thompson, who's originally from Minneapolis.
My city just burned down, so it kind of hurts.
This is something that's not unfamiliar for me.
It also means they can help us keep perspective. After all, they're protesting for their future.
Stuff like this needs to be on camera too, not just the rights. I think that both should be have like an equal share on the media because they're both so important. They both have such loud impacts and voices.
When asked what they need to feel safer in their own cities, these young adults know their ask will require patience.
It is so complex, but yet it's so simple. Like, we need people to listen.
Very first step would definitely be for the government to not even apologize, but take responsibility. Like, voice that, yes, we see police brutality, we see it's an issue, and we're trying to work on it. I don't expect change in a day.
They're willing to wait and willing to help their community move in the right direction.
Show more love instead of hate. I can't really control what they do, but I can help them realize that love is stronger than hate.
As Anusha Roy reporting, peaceful protests just like those continue in Denver right now. Tonight at 7 o'clock, 9 News is going to host an hour-long town hall, Racism and the Road to Change. Community leaders with a variety of perspectives will talk about the state of race relations, police brutality, and the path forward in our community. I hope you will join us here at 7 o'clock for that. We're starting a new project here on Next Tonight, something that I hope that we can work on together each week. A chance to turn the power and size of this audience, all of you at home, into real support for nonprofits that are making a big difference in Colorado these days. Here's what we're thinking. We'll begin each week with a word of thanks. The word that comes to mind when I think of Civic Center Park is space. Civic Center Park is a one-of-a-kind space. A beautiful public space for all people, for parties, for protests. Civic Center is Denver's only National Historic Landmark. It's seen by millions as a symbol of our city and our state. And right now, the place is a mess. After night of protests, the park in the heart of our city has been vandalized and tagged with graffiti that needs professional cleanup. Volunteers are doing what they can, but not all the work can be done by those volunteers, and not everyone can get down to help. And I know that so many of you at home want to see this park restored to its beauty. So here's what we're going to do. There's a small nonprofit called the Civic Center Conservancy. It cares for the park. And they usually raise their money through Civic Center Eats, the food truck events. But the park's been closed, obviously, due to the pandemic and then protests. Civic Center needs tens of thousands of dollars worth of professional cleanup. But there are enough people watching this program right now that if just 1 in 5 of us gave $5, we would easily cover the cost of cleaning up Civic Center Park. We'd always be able to look back and say that we, together, did that for our city and our state. We've put a link to donate on the next Facebook page and on 9news.com, and we'll just text the link right to you if you text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. And since it's really annoying when somebody on TV just asks you to give money, how about this? If you're in for $5 and you're in for $5 and you're in for $5, I will match the first 50 of you. So let's clean up Civic Center Park for people and for parties and, yes, for protests. We can do it, us, right here, tonight. We're sorting through misinformation about protests in Colorado, the real ones and the fake ones invented to make people angry. And a mother tells us she knew it before her son could even walk.
Because I just felt like I knew that because of the way that he looked, that things were going to be different for him.
She tells us about preparing for the conversation. That's next. This is Denver Mayor Michael Hancock marching with protesters, we believe for the first time in 7 days of protests in the city streets. He has said all along that he stands with peaceful protesters, and tonight he literally stands with them. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who's been quoted as saying, "Do not believe everything that you read on the internet," especially the misinformation about protests in Colorado. Take a look at a Facebook page that we got taken down after we started asking some questions recently. Colorado law enforcement is not affiliated with the state of Colorado, despite a page saying it's a government organization, despite the very real-looking state logos. On Sunday, that official-looking site shared a fake Antifa tweet saying, "Tonight we move into the residential areas, the White Hoods." It was shared 4,500 times on that page before Facebook tagged it as false.
There is no Colorado law enforcement branch of state government. This one was particularly concerning, and thanks to the public who do have an eye out for false information, they alerted us that this information had been shared, that it was false, and so we reached out to Facebook to report this group as misleading.
Facebook removed the page, and the people running it did not respond to our questions. So the Postal Service is going to try to improve communication with Denver after just kind of shrugging off the city's request. They closed down the mail distribution center for Colorado because of coronavirus at the facility. Today, that center went on the state's official outbreak list. While city health inspectors got the stiff arm from the Postal Service, they did respond to Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, who urged them to temporarily close the huge mail center at Quebec and 53rd, where now 14 employees have gotten sick. In a letter mailed back to the Congresswoman today, because, of course, the Postal Service said that it tried to tell Denver about the outbreak there, but they thought that local health inspectors were just too overwhelmed to communicate with them. The Postal Service says it's discussing ways to form a better working relationship with the city. The city, by the way, is no longer talking about just shutting the place down. A parent prepares for a difficult conversation, not about the birds and the bees, about encountering law enforcement.
Some days somebody could see him as a weapon just from the color of his skin.
A mother sits us down for the talk. Next. We just got a response from Denver District Attorney Beth McCann about our lead story tonight. The family of Marvin Booker demanding a reinvestigation of his death in the Denver jail in 2010 after Denver Mayor Michael Hancock referred to the death as a murder here on Next late last week. District Attorney McCann says, "I cannot reopen the case at this point." Those were her words. She mentions that she did take the case to a grand jury, said that secrecy prevents her from talking about those proceedings. But again, Denver prosecutors saying they cannot reopen the Booker case. That's different than will not reopen. We'll be following up with them to find out why they believe that's the case. So you have the pandemic, you have the protests, you have the parenting responsibility of raising a mixed-race child in 2020. A new mother's thoughts on those topics have been shared hundreds of times, even quoted in Forbes, and we thought that you should hear directly from her.
What are we doing? Ooh, it's warm out here already. It'll be a hot day. I'm Gretchen Burrell. I identify as a biracial female. And this is Landon, and he is also biracial male. Good job. Landon is 14 months old. I fully anticipated that Landon was going to look more like my husband than me. I thought he was going to look white. When he was first born, I remember him coming out and I was thinking like, wow, he's here, he's beautiful, he's amazing. And then I thought, oh my gosh, he looks so much like me. He's so much darker than I thought. And then my next thought was that I was going to have the cop talk with him. And I felt bad about it initially.
Say Pepper?
I think all parents who have children of color, they've all had to have the cop talk with their kids, explaining what the differences in our world are for people who aren't white, and that in the event that you're confronted with police officers, you have to be extra careful that you don't seem loud, that you don't seem aggressive.
I see your walking feet.
I knew that because of the way that he looked, that things were going to be different for him than I had anticipated, and that some days somebody could see him as a weapon just from the color of his skin, you know. I'm hopeful that Landon can grow up in a world where he doesn't have to have the cop talk with his children.
Yeah.
By having these conversations and by exposing ourselves to lots of different people of lots of different colors, hopefully you can have examples of people that, just like you know a good cop, I hope that people can know a good black person so that they can also know that we're not all bad or evil or criminal. Bye-bye.
Back with another invitation to join me and all the rest of the folks out there in cleaning up Civic Center Park. We have the ability to do it tonight, I'm telling you. That and your feedback next. Invite you again to join our weekly group project here on Next that we're kicking off tonight called Word of Thanks, where we harness the power of micro-giving and the Next audience to make a huge difference for a small to medium nonprofit in town. Tonight, if every Next viewer, or if 1 in 5 kicks in $5, 1 in 5 of you kicks in $5, we can cover the cost of the cleanup at Civic Center Park. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 or look on the Next social media accounts. I'm telling you, if it kicks in the 5 and we cover it, I'll match the first 50. Ashley says, what an amazing idea. We're in. Mike says he's not in a position to give, but he'll share the post. Mike, we appreciate that. Charlie says, you're worrying about a park. It's minuscule. What about the businesses? Charlie, raising money for businesses is difficult, but that park is a symbol of our city and our state, and we have it within our power tonight to clean it up and look back and say, we did that. See you next time.